When you are weary and life's full of sadness and grief, do not think that it never will end. Turn from your dreary thoughts, life can be full of gladness. Turn to Jesus, my friend. My friend, won't you turn, oh turn to Jesus, to Jesus, He'll always be there. Won't you turn, yes turn to Jesus and answer your prayer. You who are weary and heavily laden, don't think it's a battle you never can win. Oh, He loves you dearly, and for you He's always waiting. Oh, turn to Jesus, my friend, my friend. Won't you turn, oh turn to Jesus, to Jesus, He'll always be there. Won't you turn, yes turn to Jesus and answer your prayer.
Thank you, Scott. Friends, I'm going to invite us to the Jesus Christ consciousness, since that was just brought into this service this morning. And in unity, we invite us to know that we are one with that which we call God, not separate. And so in this consciousness of oneness, you can even imagine that Lord's Prayer as it was understood, as it was written down, as it was translated a lot of times just to get to us today. So that when Jesus was able to say, "Our Father who art in heaven," this was the cosmos. Translates as cosmos. I want you to hear that. The celestial consciousness that was being lived, that was being taught. And we're still doing our best to understand it today. So I'm inviting you to that right now. To join me. We're never out of it. And you might want to just center in. Think of it that way. That out of 8+ billion people together, we're drawn together. We're here. And out of all the stars of the universe, this star is shining through our window right now. And out of the great wisdom teachers, we're so grateful for the wisdom that helps us today, right? So we can meditate by becoming more conscious, more present, more mindful. listen, you can hear the music. You can hear the furnace. You hear my voice. And if we want to, we can close our eyes, or we can leave them open. And as we become more aware, we can even place our hand on our heart, and perhaps we can feel the very pulse of life right in our body, the heart beating. So we call upon, O thou of no name, and thou of every name, O beloved oneness that we call God, friend, one power, one presence. Reveal as light, illuminating right now, right here, what's present. May we listen with attentiveness and curiosity. May we set aside our worries, our cares, our obsessions. May we notice how the breathing changes. May we follow that breath. And we can give thanks in advance that as we become still and noticing, there are moments where we feel peace. With each breath, the key to awareness is right now and right here, opening the way that we might see and hear in a spiritual way, that we might be in this world but not of it, and that we might cast a great net of caring and compassion as we remember all those today, whether they are human or whether they are creatures, or the growing ones, the standing ones. We remember all that are experiencing duress, pain, suffering. And in this great net, this field of consciousness of light and love, we surround and enfold all in the great peace, the peace that is beyond any understanding and yet is here and prevails right here and right now. Thank you, God. Oh, thank you, beloved oneness, for this peace. We dedicate this time together. We dedicate this spiritual time of learning and being present for the well-being of others, for the peace for all. And so it is. And amen. And amen. Peace is on my mind. How about yours? Mm-hmm. We got our little hum back. Shall I turn this off? Is that, I'll leave it on? Or? Okay. It's up to y'all. Okay. Okay. There we go. We have that ability, don't we? It's really our ability to work with our mind. There can be things that really bother us. See? And we can't necessarily always turn them off. You know, if you have a friend or somebody that bugs you all the time. I was just at the school that I taught at for 12 years. And I can tell you, kids are really good at getting the attention of other kids. They can really, you know, and you can't always turn that on. And teachers can't always make kids be quiet, right? But we do have the ability to work with our mind and to become more steady with our mind. This is really important for us to hear right now. There's a lot happening in our world that is very distressing for us, scary. But we can become more mindful and more steady. And we can, like the great teacher that was mentioned, Jesus, who was during his time, great oppression, right? The Roman rule was taking over, was oppressing many people. There were many violences that were occurring. And here's this teacher of love and compassion reaching out to different races, to the immigrants, to the women. I didn't know today was somehow recognizing women, but I thought, wow, there you go. So we can remember that there's a capacity and a possibility within us to do that. We can reach into our families, to family members that really drive us nuts. And we can find a way. I have been able to discover this. I am not perfect at it. So don't count on me. I'm giving you some magic formula here. It's one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, one thought at a time sometimes, just to navigate and stay steady in being with family members, neighbors, people all around us, and of course the news, right? So I was thinking about what I heard this morning, and we celebrate a world of oneness and spiritual harmony. This type of vision is held up in many unity ministries. I'm a long-time unity minister, been around a long time. And I can tell you that sometimes I hear that and I think, wow, is it doing any good to hold this vision up? You know, you ever feel like that? You just kind of wonder. And yet what we know is that there is a type of progress, just as spring is starting to reveal itself. The earth has been turning 1,000 miles an hour. It's on an axis, it's tipping itself now in the northern hemisphere, closer to the sun. Does that make a difference? If it snows tomorrow, is it still making a difference? It is. But we live in a dynamic universe, and so we can't always see that in some areas, the temperate, areas are more balanced, right? We might live at extremes. I'm from northern Alaska. I grew up by the Arctic Circle. And so I remember those extremes of light and extremes of darkness, and how it felt as a child. What I do know today is that in this time of Lent, this is our Lenten season on the Christian calendar, this ministry is one of many in unity, but not all, because unity ministries express themselves uniquely. So we don't have a doctrine that we say, oh, you have to believe this or. That's different, and that can feel uncomfortable. But we have these 5 principles. We just keep holding them in place. They're at work, and can we understand them a little bit more? And one way with the practice of Lent leading to Easter and the spiritual implications of Easter is to think about how we, like other faith traditions, can choose a practice where we don't just let self-will rule. So if we were Muslim people, we might have Ramadan where fasting is involved, right? Some Christian traditions during Lent will have fasting. For Unity this year, one of the things that we're holding up is working with the spiritual capacity of imagination. It's power, we call it, when Jesus called the disciples to him to do the work, great work of love and compassion and nonviolence. Imagination was very important, and we can study that another time. But in Unity, it's significant to realize that we are here and we have all that we require to meet this experience right now. And in fact, I was thinking of Eknath Easwaran, who wrote the book Strength in the Storm. And he writes in here that often people will question, like, what am I doing here? I can't do anything about what's going on. And we go into this kind of end of the day sunset kind of mind, right? Everything's ending. But there's a sunrise mind. And he says we have to remember that we're required to be here. There's something so essential about this universe that ensures that we're here at this time. Each of us is important. And we may not understand what we have to offer. How can I do anything about a war? But I can prevent a war when I call the insurance company. I'm all upset about whatever they're doing with my bills. I can prevent a little mini war with my husband. We've been together a long time. I can tell you there are times we don't get along, we don't agree. But I can bring a little more peace into that relationship, right? To my family, to my neighborhood, into the schools. So it's important what we offer. And I wanted to introduce a symbol that I'm going to work with today as we think about Lent. And it's the idea of a net. And I have like a little shopping bag, those old-fashioned, they're made of cotton, and you can put your vegetables in these little netted bags so that you're not taking more plastic out the door. And so I'm always looking to reduce the plastic. So I left it in the car. And I was looking at this over here, and it kind of looks like a net, this tree. And the people online, you may not be able to see it, but imagine a tree and you're gazing up and light's coming through the leaves, and they all look like they're all connected in kind of a big net, really. And there's an ancient story of a net. It comes through the Hindu tradition, the Buddhist tradition, and it's called Indra's net. Anybody ever heard of Indra's net? Okay, a couple people. Indra's net. This was recently brought again to my attention, and I looked it up and I thought it's so interesting. So I want you to think of this net. It's a cosmic net, though. So when I talk about a net, and here in Port Huron, we've got fishing that happens out here, right? We're in the Great Lakes bioregion. We've got a lot of fishing. I think people still use nets today. They did where I grew up. And that's a three-dimensional net. So when I talk about a cosmic net, we have to think really differently. You have to think like every direction you look is the net. Can you imagine that right now? Like you're sitting under a tree and it's like, woo, it takes over everything. Every direction you look, there's this movement. Imagine wind coming through the tree. Indra's net. And this net fashioned the whole world like a web. But every knot in the web, in the net, is actually a jewel. Jewel. And in some traditions, the story comes across, it's like a pearl. In others, it's like, wow, like a diamond, with many facets to it. But every single place, everywhere they connect, all these connections, because everything's connected, there's a jewel. And some people will say, that's you, that's you, that's you, that's you, that's you, that's you. It's every part of creation. You're the jewel, you're the jewel, you're the jewel. But what's fascinating about this net, and the way the story is told, is that every jewel reflects all the other jewels. So it's as though every jewel is all the other jewels. Now this is really interesting because Einstein came up with this kind of thinking. He was imaginative, wasn't he? He used his imagination. We know this about him. And our Lenten booklet is very much about using imagination leading up to Easter. Really understanding the power of imagination. And Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, he and his wife, he said that imagination is like the scissors. And our writer in our Lenten book that quotes from a woman that wrote later after Charles, imagination is like the scissors of the mind. You imagine like you're cutting out shapes and forms with your imagination. Okay, so this net, so we can imagine that every single individual, like Einstein did, everything is interconnected. And he had a name for it. Let's see if I can find it in here. Some of you know about quantum physics, and so you'll probably remember it. Here it is. He called it, in quantum entanglement, spooky action at a distance. So if you like to study science, which I now and then really do, he had this awareness of everything interconnected. Not 3D, but everything is actually reflecting everything else. I'm holding this up for us today because as much as we can feel dismayed, depressed by what's going on in the world, afraid, scared, anxious, is it you, Scott? You know, sometimes you can just feel like your shoulders tightening up. Last time I was here when I introduced Lent, I talked about release, right? Because each of these days as we go through this Lenten book is about releasing something and then reimagining how to be with the energy. Because everything's energy. It's all energy. And so we can release the breath completely. So let's practice that again since I get to be back here with you today. So we breathe in, but then when you exhale, get it all out. Like squeeze it all out like a balloon. Try to get it all out. Okay? I'm going to be quiet. You try that. At home, you try that. Can you feel that? And when we really release, what happens is we draw it in deeper. So you actually bring in breath deeper because we just squeezed it all out. And so we want to move energy in these ways to help us, but we also want to work with the mind. Okay, so that's how we can work with our body, which we're very aware of. Very aware of our body. It's tight, it hurts, breathing is fast, your heart is palpitating when you're worried about talking to your whatever family member about something, or you got to go talk to your boss about something, your coworker was snarky and you want to try to deal with it, right? We feel it in our bodies. And today we want to really ask ourselves how we can work with our mind and our energy. And one way is to imagine and to visualize that we are never separate from that light, that goodness that is reflected in the whole universe that can help us. We're never separate. And the Hebrew scripture in the Bible starts with the creation story, an ancient story. And it is the creator of all saying, let there be light. It isn't let there be light. I want us to think about that. As much as we make awful things out there, darkness, and as much as some very narrow-minded religious thinking can make that darkness and and meanness to be about some critter running around doing things like a separate power, doing something to you and doing something to you, and making God a separate power, doing some goodness to you and goodness to you, but, oh, you're not good enough. No, no. What I found when I came into Unity all those years ago is there is one presence and one power. And it is one of goodness and light. It is for life to thrive, for you to thrive, for you to be well and do well, no matter what anybody else says about you. No matter what you've done in your past, you feel lousy about. There is a goodness as you. Father Gregory Boyle, anybody familiar with his work? Homeboy Industries in California, working with gangs. He says there is an unshakable goodness in every person, no matter what they've done. I love that man. I love how he's got that so clear. And he says, but people will go out and they'll start making a mess out of their life again. And then he said that they used to, at Homeboy Industries, they teach people skills, they get to rebuild their lives and jobs and everything else. He said they used to say, well, maybe they'll come back. They don't say that anymore. They say, they'll come back. Why? Because they got a dose. He calls it doses, a dose of love. And people would say to him, what good is love? What good is compassion? What good is kindness? When people go out and mess with their lives and hurt other people again. He said, because they remember the dose. It's like light. You can't believe in darkness anymore. And the scientists tell us that now also. Energy is everywhere present. It is a form of light. It's energy. We send communications through light, right? So we are connected through all this light to that which can help us, can enlighten us about our problems, can enlighten us about our issues, can enlighten us with ideas about how we can bring peace, how we can bring nonviolence to the issues, the social justice issues of our day. Thank you, Martin Luther King. Thank you, Mahatma Gandhi, who did not stand aside and think that it's going to magically work out. They went into the issues. They went into the problems. And they brought light. They brought goodness. We saw the goodness in all people, including women. Yay! In today's world, we see the power of our children. I don't know you back there, but I want you to know that we now see our children as very intelligent, with great ideas, perspectives that we need. The great teacher Jesus knew this. He said, in order for us to be in the cosmic reality, the God reality, we have to become like little children. We have to see things more simply. Okay? So I know a story, and it has to do with releasing and letting go. And this week, I've got a writing in here, and it's about, so it starts out tomorrow with releasing bitterness. Okay, and some things may seem really difficult. If you've ever had acid reflux before, which is how I came to write this little page on releasing bitterness. Bitterness is like acid, and it travels up, does havoc in your gut, and comes up the esophagus, and it's just blah. And you think you can never get out of it, and you go to the doctor and take this pill, and it made it worse. And, you know, it took a lot of thinking about it differently for me to be able to address what was going on in my beings, where there was bitterness and resentment. And bitterness and resentment or anger, these are forms of energy, right? Forms of energy. So we can make them wrong, or we can say, what's happening with this? How can I work with this energy? How can I bring light to it? So the problem can seem very, very large. And in fact, this little story is about a problem that occurred for a truck driver. And I live in Oxford, which is south of here, for those of you online, maybe from far away. And when I used to travel to the school where I taught, I would go from 24 underneath this little bridge, a beautiful stone, little small bridge where the train track used to come across, the train came through, and it's Indian Lake Road. And so go underneath this little bridge. So I often think of it when I'm by that bridge, this story of a truck driver. And, truck drivers nowadays, they have like measurements for bridges and which highway, freeways, whatever they're going to go on so they don't get stuck underneath bridges, right? Because they got these great big trucks nowadays. Well, anyway, this particular story is of a truck driver that got stuck underneath a bridge. Now that's a problem. That's a problem. And so it is in some respects in our own life when we feel really stuck. And in this story, finally a phone call is made and out come all the troops, so to speak. The first responders, the fire truck people, the police officers, eventually the tow company, they're all out there. And of course, if this was happening in your neighborhood, then you'd be out there too. It'd be like the news of the year or something, the truck that got stuck. And so out are the families and people watching and the kids. This is high entertainment. Well, they can't figure out what to do. They don't have a solution. It's a problem. And they're at that point of, do they take apart the truck? Do they take apart the bridge? But as I mentioned, in the midst of everything is this child, a young person, could be your age. What age are you? Good, this is a great age. Okay, 9. Let's pretend this person's 9. And that child is looking at this whole thing and is paused and is listening to all the adults and everything and says, well, what if you let out the air of the tires? Maybe you've heard me tell it before. I love this story. It's kind of like this real simple, like here's the tow trucks, here's the big equipment, sending in all the complex technological approaches to everything, and here's a child. Why don't you let a little air out of the tire? It's great, isn't it? But sometimes that comes from a certain calmness, where the mind isn't too adulterated, making things bigger than they need to be, making things more a problem than they need to be. The writer for this Sunday, the third Sunday of Lent, I happen to know her, Reverend Christina Garza. She says, our imagination is a powerful gift, but when misused, especially in the absence of facts and faith, it can become a source of anxiety, fear, and limitation rather than creativity, vision, or healing. Catastrophizing is when we imagine the worst case scenario about evidence. It's the misuse of imagination to predict disasters, assume failures, or interpret uncertainty as danger, making it a lot worse than it needs to be. Do you know that there are people out there right now that are saying, Armageddon? If you don't know what that is, I'm not going to tell you. But I can tell you it's some end of the world kind of catastrophe thinking. I want us to think again. Let there be light. When we get into that doom and gloom kind of thinking, that's misuse of our imagination. But we're really, really good at it. We're taught to worry about things. Don't touch that, you'll burn yourself, right? Mm-hmm. We're taught to do a lot of imagination that has to do with what can go wrong. But we're not necessarily lifted up for imagination that is big and vast. Buckminster Fuller, how many of you know of him? So he was just an amazing man. He was a future visionary thinker. But he was, for the most part, almost blind as a child, and he was in school, and he couldn't see things, and he'd get these assignments, and one of them one time was with toothpicks and little gumdrops, and they were supposed to be making these geometric shapes, and he couldn't really see because of his eyesight. It wasn't later till he got these big thick glasses. We used to call them Coke bottom glasses or whatever. And he started playing with all kinds of shapes because he couldn't do whatever the assignment was. He just played. And I love that also, that there was a simplicity kind of set up in his mind that he couldn't do it exactly the way everybody said. But he didn't have to have fear about it. He just began to play with it. He didn't know that his sight was different than anybody else's. And when we start obtaining and gaining progress with spiritual sight, we see things differently. We begin to see that there's possibilities where other people are saying, that you're doomed. We begin to hold in Indira's net the reflection that there's a great interconnectedness at work. And it's not dependent on one president or one leader of a country or one parent. You know, it actually, there is an interconnected whole. It's at work. And it's literally shimmering and shining new ideas and new possibilities at all times. At all times. I didn't get to come into a Unity church when I was 9, but I came in at age 29. And somebody said, the good that you are seeking is seeking you. That was revolutionary. I came from a really rough childhood. And somebody was standing around in a church saying, one presence, one power, and it's goodness. It's not damning. It's not sending you to some place called hell. And the good that you are seeking is seeking you. You see, it's those jewels, they're reflecting all else. We're never separate from the goodness and the potential and the possibility. So we can release our sense of trying to figure it out. We can release the misuse of imagination that happens due to fear, right? And we can reimagine that there might be possibilities that nobody's talking about. And Bucky Fuller did that. He just started designing the geodesic domes. The school that I taught at had one. That was one of their first school buildings, was a geodesic dome. The children they built a bridge over 2 years. They began doing things that, what, kids, what? You see, new ideas were forming back in the 70s for children in schools, coming out of the 60s. And this might be such a time. This might be a radical pivot point where we actually say, we are not going any farther with these systems that are designed to get you sky miles so you can travel somewhere, but they are funding fossil fuel industries that are taking away the health of our water and our earth for our children. We may need to suck it up a little bit financially and think of it as an investment. That what our actions and our thinking is doing right now, what we do with our mind is having direct relevance to the health and well-being of each other. That when you and I can draw a line with fear, what we do in our mind with opening possibility thinking is radiating like light. No longer do we believe that we radiate darkness. We have the capacity to radiate light. And what light can be, right? A light of possibility, bringing wells into villages. All the many ideas. Remember when the Ukraine war began, when Russia went into Ukraine? Somebody got this idea that they could go through Airbnb and they could pay for places so that as people were escaping, they had a place to go that was funded. They couldn't get money into people in Ukraine to get out, but they could make a space already funded for them when they got out. Wow. Interconnectedness of where we're at. So I have a little something for you to take home today. And it's the word pause. Okay, so we talk about releasing. Right? So we want to work with our imagination, and in our mind, we want to think more simply. We've got to pause because we're so busy, we adults. We adults. So we have to pause more so that we can become more mindful of our breath. Just our breath will help us pause. Right? So this word pause, I want you to think of it as an acronym, P-A-U-S-E, right? And every letter stands for something. Okay, so since I play with this and I invent things, I'm going to go to what I have for you here today, because I have so many of these now. It's a great way to pause, is just put your attention on this word, pause, and then make up what the letters are going to stand for. Just doing that moves the mind out of the rut. Okay, it's the way of releasing. Remember when I was here 2 weeks ago, releasing isn't like getting rid of stuff into a garbage can in the sky. Releasing is moving energy. So it's no longer stuck like that truck under a bridge. So it's moving energy so that we can reimagine. So we can pause the mind with breath. We can pause the mind with this little exercise. What would you use for words that start with P-A-U-S-E? Here's what I came up with. Perhaps another unanticipated solution exists. P-A-U-S-E. Perhaps another unexpected, unanticipated solution exists. And in the great cosmic net, it's there. The idea is there. And using our imagination to imagine that, I am already connected to the idea, to the good, that is my solution for this fear, for this anxiety, right? For this sense of lack, right? Self-criticism. I'm already connected. Whether it's for a business, a solution for a challenge in a business, right? A relationship, with your body, perhaps another, say it with me, unexpected and anticipated solution exists. Got it? Pause. Pause and hold that in mind. This is what we call Christ thinking. Jesus does things that are out of the box. He's an anarchist. He's tipping tables. He's rocking the boat. With gentleness, kindness, stories about a good Samaritan. Right? Those ideas are right. He didn't tell them to worry. In fact, he told us to have value right where we're at. Well, friends, thank you for inviting me to be with you today. I'm with you in this whole wonderful journey called Lent. We had one more book here, but if you don't have this book and you want it, you can go to unity.org and get a free copy sent to you. Okay? So it's available at unity.org, free copy. Just look for the Lenten book. And with that, I think that we will shift right into working with our energy. So when you imagine your gift today of presence, right? The gift today of dedicating what you do in your mind for the well-being of others. Gift of music, gift of turning on the heat this morning, arriving early, the gift of smiles, the gift of hugs, and also with our finances. We bring light to this. If you feel constricted in any way with your finances, and I did when I came into my first Unity church, I would get done with the graveyard shift job, and I would bring my husband's grandmother to church. It was a Unity church, first one I ever went to. And I'd go to, what do I have to eat and give? And one day I said, I'll put my lucky penny in there. I'm not depending on luck anymore. I'm going to depend on the one presence and the one power that's going to see me through. And here I am, every day, seeing God. So will you affirm with me, divine love adds to me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And boy, does it multiply. So you go out there this spring and you try to tell me that the universe doesn't multiply. Just try to tell me. I won't believe you. So here I give joyfully and easily, for God is my source and abundance is my nature.